Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.
Hi, and welcome to Nerdish, Nerdy Nerd News. Come along and ride with us as we explore, discuss, and nerd-splain some of the most interesting topics of today.
Hey, I'm Ferg. I spent my youth playing sports, then I moved into IT, so I've been around nerds quite a bit. I hope to have some laughs and learn some things along the way.
Hey, I'm Tim. Hung around with nerds a lot growing up, hoping that it would rub off. I think it kind of did, because I'm kind of nerdish. And as always, my co-hosts.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I'm Christian. I've been playing and writing, creating games and Dungeons & Dragons since high school. My idea of a relaxing weekend is playing vids with my buds online. I also used to do complex math troubles with my dad for fun. I am very nerdy. And with us to help us understand the world a little better.
Hi, I'm Jess. I've been programming and using computers since the early 80s. I'm a voracious reader, consistently going through about 500,000 or more words a month. I've got some biochemistry in my background, and I've been using technology for as long as I can remember. I am the nerd.
No, just
All right.
not going to miss some genius comedy here.
Far from genius, no, it's
But needless to say, it didn't venture as good for me wearing the Santa suit as it does for you. So, like, I don't know. I don't want to jinx it or give anybody away your secrets that what you do on Christmas at home with. You know,
it's the way you wear it, right? You got to be the part. That is very true.
So we've started off here. We got Ryan Dionne in the studio with us, and Fergal's back here again. And we're going to sit and talk about solar and the sun. And the power of the sun, because Ryan has solar like me.
the bright one, the very bright lights. They shine upon us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they make lots of power.
Sweet, sweet power.
Yep. Sometimes when I'm bored, I just look at the number and I'm like, oh, yeah. Higher. Where are we going to go? Higher?
Higher.
Bigger? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
Ring those phones.
Yeah,
Ring
pretty
oh,
much.
wait.
Cha-ching, cha-ching,
And
cha-ching.
then like it tops out and you're like, oh,
Yeah. Oh, when
I
it
need
when
a
it
bigger inverter.
I just
do-
need more sun.
do yours plateau like mine and Jeff's?
No.
No,
Because I've
because
got
you
the
got
micros I can go
so
until.
we've got different setup. All three of us, me, Jeff, and Ryan Dionne here, we have 3 different setups, and so there's certain parts like mine will go up like a mountain, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the day it just plateaus, and that's the max amount of power I can make in it. We have like I call it perfect boob production levels, and that's when my mound is just perfectly round.
So that's you're talking about like a chart where
Yes.
it shows
Yeah,
how
like a
much
graph.
energy is being produced
Yeah,
during
yeah.
the
Nah,
day.
he's talking about boobs.
No, I'm talking about boobs.
See, mine usually does actually turn out more like a boob with
Yeah.
like a top on it.
Yeah.
But
So you have
I've got microinverters. So there's really 2 different kinds. And when he says 3, the third kind is more that his are set up similar to mine, even though he's got string inverters, which is all the DC power comes together in a combiner, and then it goes into your big inverter and turns it into AC power. And that's how his works, and that's fine. On mine, there is a microinverter behind every 2 panels that turns it to AC power. Then all the AC power combines in my house, and it goes.
Oh, okay.
So my microinverters limit how much power they can convert, right? So like, for example, you can have like 30 kilowatts worth of solar panels, but if your microinverter is like Christian's and only puts out 10 kilowatts,
that's the most it'll invert.
that's most it'll ever invert, which depending on the orientation of your panels, that might be fine.
But when you have the micro one there in back of 2 panels, they're designed to be able to do the maximum those 2 panels can do.
Well, they should be. Okay. I trusted the guys that told me the microinverters I should use, and I probably should have read it just a little bit closer, because I called them on it afterwards. I'm like, wait a second, like I've got 2 480 watt panels, but the most my microinverters can do, which should be 960, is actually like 920 or some arbitrary number that's not the full.
Right.
But like I would also need the sun perfectly shining to reach. So there's not very many points of the day that ever actually occurs in my system, but it does. Like a few seconds. Do I lose a little bit of sleep over it? No, I don't really lose much sleep over it.
No.
Because that's happening during the day. I'm already awake. So otherwise I would lose sleep. If I was sleeping during the day, I would lose sleep over it. And more like Christians, for example, they were going by the principle, like his orientation of his roof are east and west. So when the sun is in the east, the panels on the west aren't producing, and vice versa. But there's that magic time when it's like
right
away.
over the center.
And we live in Saskatchewan. When the sun is above you, in the middle of noon, in the middle of summer, it is literally right above you. All of those panels will be reducing.
That's
Yeah.
right. But they're not because the angle. They're
They're
like,
not
if you look
facing
at,
the sun.
Yeah, you got to look at the pitch. So like his actually face east and west, which are probably better for like Saskatchewan, where you get the amount you get paid varies based on when you're producing and when you're using. Right?
So my system is 17.9 kilowatts of total panels, but my inverter maxes out at 11.4.
Okay, so more panels, lower inverter, but that's because
they're betting. They're betting that all of them are not producing, which they theoretically can't, right? Because like some of them face west and some face east, and the angle they're going, there's no way that you'll ever get 17. What's the magic number? Well, you could probably put it into a calculator.
Yeah.
And they could tell you, well, you might peak out at.
Well, and then like you talk to them about, oh, I should have got a bigger inverter, and they're like, well, no, actually, the bigger inverter is less efficient, and it's just like, oh,
That's what they tell you.
I know.
Yeah. Are they right? Like, are we talking about a fraction of whatever? But would you spend an extra $5,000 or $10,000 to make an extra $2 of the power a month?
Yeah,
Which is
there's a
pretty
little
much
bit of
it.
a return on investment on that.
Yeah.
That's right. Like, and if you're doing this, you should be doing this based on the math.
Yeah, like see here's Thursday. There's a perfect boob day.
That's a good boob.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
a B cup. But like other
Most
days,
days,
days, the weeks before that, you can see it plateaus there, so it lops the nipple off.
It's very much a flat mountain at the top.
Yes. So those are, and I mean, for my system, I'm making 111 kilowatt hours. So my typical house usage, and most people are like 20 to 30 kilowatt hours per day. Like you'd probably, what's your bill a month, Fergal?
About 180.
Yeah. So you'd probably be sitting at about 30 to 35 kilowatts a day. Our monthly bill was
Here's
like
the excitement of
three.
today.
Our
All the
monthly
clouds
bill
we had
was
in the afternoon.
350. So we were doing roughly around 50 kilowatt hours a day. So when I'm putting 111 back into the grid, I'm actually banking extra. But it's funny, we've kind of changed how we do everything. We've changed, like you do your dryer during the day so that you're not pulling power off of the grid. You're just pulling it off of the solar panels. You set your timers on washing machines and things like that, and dishwashers to run during the day. If you're going to do a big roast, you don't roast at night. You roast during the day. We try to, because like the way the SAS power system is set up is it charges you when you're pulling off the grid. Even though you've got a credit, you still get charged a little bit of money for pulling it off the grid. Like you get charged taxes for what you use.
And there's no like peak time and off.
We don't have that yet, no.
Hopefully soon.
Yes.
Hopefully very soon.
We've seen some systems in, where was that one?
Ontario,
Ontario, where it was from 11 till 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. It's 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So just as a reference, Saskatchewan is 14.5 cents a kilowatt hour.
Might be more now. Who knows? They
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. It's
Yeah.
not,
don't show it anymore.
They don't
on the,
put it on the bills
No, you
anymore.
have to actually do the math.
Well, you can actually go on their website. It does tell you the
But in
price.
That's where I was
Ontario,
going next,
so in
yeah.
Ontario, they have 4 times of day, and the cheap stuff is 4 cents a kilowatt hour during the middle of the night, and then but during the middle of the day when it's prime time or whatever,
Yeah.
4 till 9 o'clock at night. So 4 p.m. till 9 at night or whatever.
So 4 p.m. till 9 p.m. at night, it's like 24
cents a kilowatt hour.
So like they're laying the
Prime,
boost.
sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it works in Ireland.
Yeah.
So we would have that. We would have had that in Ireland as well, where my parents would have you to the dryer at a certain time during the day, right? Because it was cheaper.
Pretty much everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But Canada.
But Saskatchewan.
But Saskatchewan.
It's the we don't have all the smart meters to be able to know what time of day you're using power, whereas everyone else was installing them in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
But if you look at their grids too, like for SAS Power, for the longest time, it didn't matter because it cost the same to burn coal to produce power, whether it's 8 in the morning, 8 at night. It doesn't. There wasn't a cheap time for them to produce power. right? So it didn't matter. So what do they care? Everyone pays the same power all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you look at places where they've got a ton of solar, a ton of wind, or whatever. It's like, okay, well, if we can get you to use the power during those times, it's cheaper, and vice versa, right? So that's why all those places have more time of use power, right? But for here, that's not really a thing. And
Yeah.
even if they tried, it would be too hard to make it really a thing. Now, when Ontario did this one, the reason Ontario made this change, or at least that's what they say, is Ontario Power is coming to a problem where they haven't built a new nuclear power plant in like a long time, like 30 some years. So they haven't built any new base load power. So all they've got is they've just been building a bunch of solar farms and windmills and things like that, which is great.
So all of their power is during the day.
All their power is during the day. And so all of a sudden they've come to this problem where it's like, we don't make enough power from 4 p.m. until 9 p.m. What do we do?
Yeah.
So like they're literally paying like shops with diesel generators, like pump out some power, because otherwise like it's going to go off, right? Like the power is going to go off. So they've been doing this time of use thing for quite a while to try to encourage people to push their times off. And, you know, if you're in a factory producing things, you're going to turn the shop down at 4 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Why would you want to be open?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah.
Like when they're talking to GM and GM's like, hey, we're going to put a shift on. Well, you're not going to put that shift on to build that car between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., right? And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, we can do that. That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to bring them in from 11 to 4 in the morning when it's only 4 cents a kilowatt hour.
And they're talking about these, like, they're going to build like some $13 billion battery factory out there.
Yeah,
well, it's going to
the
take a lot
Volkswagen
of
battery.
power.
Well, and those factories can't shut down. They don't have shifts. They just run.
Right. So again, they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are you going to do? And so this was actually one of the things they were talking about. So they're going to be building some natural gas power plants there because they have no choice.
No base power. Yeah.
Yeah, but you need something you can build quicker, right?
Yeah.
Nuclear power takes forever to build. It's great, but people were sleeping at the front of this, you know, for the last 35 years of what should we do? Oh, we'll be fine. Like it won't matter, right? And so now they're like, oh, well, what are we going to do? And one of the other things they're talking about is they're like, oh, we're going to have to actually turn some of these nuclear reactors down
we
in
have
the
to
next couple of years.
decommission them.
To just not permanently
No,
decommission, but recertify and do all these steps
Well,
for maintenance.
Chalk River, which is one of the breeder ones that does power as well, they produce the medical isotopes and stuff,
Yep.
is almost at end of life.
Yeah, and they will extend the life, but
They will, but it's been there for like 40 or something
they
like
have
that
to
years.
turn it off
Yeah.
to do this because
Yeah.
they have to go through all the inspections, and it's like, oh yeah, we didn't have a plan for that. How do you not have a plan for that? Like you're sitting there like a couple $1 billion company, right?
Your only job is to get power to people, and you know you have to turn this light switch off.
Yeah, like Alberta, I can see how they can come up with that problem because Alberta's power is a little bit different than a couple other places where they literally just have like a market. They go out there and like, we want some power. Who's going to sell us the cheapest power? And people come up with suggestions. They're like, we can build you this and all these things. They're like, we'll pick you, not you, and you're too much money.
Yeah.
Just kind of a random, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But so you would think that they would have this problem because they made the wrong choices. But Ontario just kind of did
Nothing.
They're just like, this is cool.
Yeah,
we'll be fine.
I was looking it up, and I got a map that has. This is in U.S., so it's
Their prices.
The prices, yeah. Like Saskatchewan, it's showing it at 14 cents, so it's pretty close.
But if you look at that map, I've seen it before. It says in U.S. dollars.
In U.S. dollars, yeah.
So
yeah.
it's kind of wrong.
It is wrong, yeah. But it's still by ratio. Let's look at it that way, right?
Yeah. We'll
So Quebec is 6 cents. All that hydropower.
Living the dream by geographical gift
Yes.
of God. And anybody that's like, we should have more hydropower.
Where?
We should just build some mountains.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll pump some water up there, and then the water will come down from the mountain. We'll have free power.
That's what they do.
That's
Actually,
it,
they
yeah.
do that in the UK. That they use that as a battery for their solar power.
That's right. When you need a geographical
Yes.
gift of God.
We got
to
Cyprus.
Sure, we'll just start
Just
pumping
dig out
up.
the top of Cyprus and fill it up.
You know, you joke, but we've built all these dams here.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was kind of part of the idea behind it, is to store the water. And the only problem is there's been so many agreements over the years where you can't keep water because somebody else down from you needs it, right? So you're like, oh, we're gonna store up all this water for power. And if we did that, all of a sudden North Dakota would be like, the fuck you doing up there?
Where's our water?
And you'd be like, what are you talking about? We don't have any water. And be like, oh, I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
When they like it's you go across the border and you look at the irrigation they have.
Oh yeah.
Like it's unreal. So I mean, yeah, destroy their farm industry just by
And again,
plugging the.
things that other provinces had done, right? On Alberta, there's tons of irrigation. You drive across the border and they're just spraying water everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But again, before that, it was just dry, whatever. right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now we're getting far off of the solar thing or whatever it is. But
But
yeah,
we were
it's
talking
interesting.
about the price
the
of kilowatt
infrastructure
hour.
and
though.
things,
It's
Yeah.
interesting to explain better why somebody's price of power is so much different than the next guy.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Do you know where the largest solar plant in the world is?
Well, not in Saskatchewan.
No, no.
If I had to guess,
4 of the top 5 are in Asia.
well, yeah, I can see
Yeah.
that. Yeah. See, the problem is it's unlikely to be in the U.S. because they put tariffs on the solar panels that they import.
Well, that's big oil, big coal.
No, but just as a government, because they're trying to protect their industry, they put tariffs on the price, and we do it in Canada. So, like, I pay way more for solar panels than if I was to order them in a shipping container and declare them as not solar panels and order them from China.
You
I don't-
didn't do that,
I didn't, but I might know somebody that
He
did.
was looking into it.
And like legitimately, like he told me the price he paid, and this was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We met the guy, maybe even more than that. And I'm like, that's like pennies on the dollar to what I paid just like last year.
Yeah.
And like the prices have come down.
Yeah.
So like if I was to do what he did, somehow manage to get a shipping container full of solar panels,
Through customs without anyone noticing.
like
Experimental.
I don't remember. He
For
told-
any of our listeners out there, please reach out to us if you have any cheap solar panels that are not solar panels, quote unquote.
he told me what he declared them as, and I'm like, what? Like that doesn't even make any sense. And he's like,
Children's toys.
Housing, like a side housing panels for,
yeah. I'm like, good on him.
Yeah.
And so like it worked. But yeah, so like I would assume that it was going to be someplace in Asia where they were able to build them for cheaper and they didn't have to pay any duties. Because it wouldn't be in Europe. Maybe in Africa, depending on where it was, but I'm going to guess probably close to China.
Okay, so the largest solar plant in the world is in India. I'm not going to try to pronounce the town,
Good, 'cause I wouldn't get it right if I had to repeat you.
but it's called Badia Solar Park. Now, do you remember Back to the Future?
Yep.
Yeah. How many gigawatts did it take to run the flux capacitor?
6.5.
1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, although they pronounce it gigawatts because they didn't know. This,
It didn't have to be factually correct.
yeah, I know. This solar plant will produce 2,245 megawatts
So
of
2.
power.
So 2.2 gigawatts.
Yeah,
We can travel back in time now.
it cost
twice.
$1.4 billion to build.
And, you know, somebody thought the economics of it would work. And good on them.
Yeah,
Right?
But it powers like an entire area of India basically during the day.
Yeah, I was going to say, when the sun shines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Then the next one is in China, Qinghai province, 2.2 gigawatts.
Yep.
Yeah. So these are actually visible from space.
I'm sure they probably look pretty interesting.
I think we figured it out one time. I went and looked it up, and it's something like 40,000 acres.
Well,
Yeah.
the one they're building right now, they just did it. They're currently building it in Alberta. I don't remember how big it is, but it's one of the bigger ones in Canada.
Well, the next closest one in Canada isn't even a gigawatt. It's like 700 or something like that, or
Yeah.
8 or 900.
Well, it's we were just looking here. Like, there's 2 in India, 2 in China, and then there's 1 in Egypt.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, you look at these maps of where the solar potential for North America is, and southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, North Dakota, Idaho are like the cream of the crop for solar potential for photovoltaic. So, I mean, if we're going to do solar anywhere in this country, it should be here. Like, we should be
Well, we should have been doing it already, really, shouldn't we?
we should be producing the panels here. We've got silica sand right in Cyprus, like, or right in
Lots of the silica is the most common.
yeah, like
element
we've
to
got
the
the
Earth's
we've
mantle.
got the elements here to build the panels right from scratch, and it's just mind-boggling that we don't have the manufacturing that we're doing it here in the solar hotspot of.
We can't find people to work the current jobs we have in this province, but somehow you think you're going to build some solar panels. They literally couldn't find people to bolt these panels to the racking in Alberta to build this farm. So, like, to put this in perspective, like, you didn't need to be an electrician. They literally wanted people, because, like, the electrician went around and they'd already put all the power there. And your job was they would drop the panel in place with a crane, and there's, like, 4 bolts. You just got to go.
And it wasn't even with a hand wrench; it was with a powered wrench.
That's right.
Yeah,
And, like,
yeah.
it doesn't get any easier.
And knowing Alberta, it's probably a $40 or $45 an hour job.
I didn't look at the wage, but, like, you needed no experience, and they couldn't find people to do the job.
Crazy.
So anytime people are like, we should build it here, I'm like, who is we?
Who's
Like, should we close down all the McDonald's and have the workers there come build panels? Because, like, that's what we're almost
That's
at.
a win-win, though.
Yeah, but if if you build it, like, you'll start to get people emigrating from other parts of Canada to here.
That's assuming that people
the job
want to do
you're
that
talking
job.
about is a short-term job. If you have an industry where you have a full-time job you can come to, that is, a career, that's a different story.
I always question the idea of manufacturing jobs that people want to move there for them, mostly because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, you're like,
Production line jobs are very difficult.
And I knew I could tell you this because I knew you would understand. Like, I couldn't. I had a job doing that for like 4 months, and I'm like, I'm going to jump off the roof.
I did it for many years.
Just as long as you don't land on my solar panels.
There's coping mechanisms that you literally, like, I would get to work, I would start working, and then I'd wake up and it would be lunchtime.
Oh.
And I wouldn't remember anything between it.
I just drank. Just drank.
That was in his younger days.
Drank and went to the strippers.
Yeah,
That's how I get to it.
you get to the point where you're not even thinking about what your hands and arms are doing. You're talking to the guy next to you, and all of a sudden, it's time to go home.
See, that seems like a good idea. Depending,
No, it's not, because you lose all of that time.
but it's dangerous, and depending what you do. So I would
Yeah.
fall asleep for that too, but then it'd be like, oh shit,
Weird.
did I put that clip in that meter?
Yeah. Well, what I was doing was with knives, so you knew if you screwed it up.
So it was obvious right away because you're bleeding, right?
Yeah.
So like me, like we'd put through all these meters or whatever. So I'm not going to say where it worked because it didn't turn out very well in the end when we went through and tested some of the ones, and like I had no labels on some of them. They're like, why didn't you put labels on it? I'm like, I don't remember that month. But like you do the same thing over and over again. And this is where automation needs to take place, because people that are doing these jobs, like, I get people need a job, but like very few people are like, I want to put that panel in that corner of that car all day long, 40 hours a week.
I want to lift this piece off of that conveyor belt, stick it into there, and then do that again
for the rest of my life. Like,
well, no, you work your way up.
But when your option,
Instead of doing that panel, I want to do the other panel.
but again, it's your menial jobs. We've got post-secondary, so you're looking at the people who don't want to work at McDonald's, don't want to work at Walmart anymore for minimum wage, and they can. I mean, I've got a friend, we play online together, and he's working at what's the new one in town? The Brandt, putting the trailers together because he doesn't have an education. He's barely. I don't even think he has his high school. But he's out there making $20-$25 an hour putting the trailers together.
but he's also a welder.
No.
No. So he's literally just bolting things
He's
together.
bolting things together. And so, that's where those production line jobs...
Again, who's going to do it?
They can't find even people at Brandt.
Oh, no. They filled up Brandt in the week that they're ahead on production, all kinds of stuff.
Maybe, but everybody I talked to, they went looking for people and they couldn't hire because they're looking for welders. Maybe they got people to assemble, but when they're looking for welders, like they came looking, and most of the guys that I know, like one of my tenants, he welds at a different shop, and they came through looking. They're like, hey, would you guys like a pay raise? And his boss is like, we're going to give you guys all pay raises if you stay here. And he's like, oh, this is a good deal.
Well, let's get back to solar stuff here. But took a little bit of a divergent there. I was reading, and I can't remember what it was. I think it was France now, when they build a car park, like a parking lot.
Yep.
It has to be covered, and solar panels.
See, now those ideas make more sense. Because when people are like, we're going to take 100 acres and we're going to build solar panels on it, I'm like, you mean to tell me there's no empty roofs?
Yeah, you're going to take
exactly.
all that arable land.
So you think about the Safeway parking lot, or co-op parking lot, or
any place where you build
a parking lot.
Yep.
And they say, okay, it has to be covered. So one, your car is never going to be hot It's not going to get covered with snow in the winter. And two, at least in Saskatchewan, that's what I'm talking about there. Two, the entire top is covered with solar panels. So not only you're producing power that contradicts what that company is using in that for that parking lot, you could be producing it for the charging spaces for electric cars. You could be putting it back into the grid. You could,
For most of it, the economics isn't far off. Like there's a lot of companies that are doing it. I think it was Lowe's or Home Depot or one of them. They were just talking that they're going to put solar on the roof of like all of their stores. Well, why not?
Yeah.
exactly, it's wasted space.
It's a wasted space.
It's wasted space, and it actually makes the life of your roof longer because you're now protecting it from the heat.
Well,
Yeah, and the city has done it now as well. They have it in the Yara Centre, the multiplex, all of those places like City Hall.
yeah.
That they do.
We were just talking. Ryan and I were just talking
I
about
was
that
just about to bring that
and
up.
the weird angles that they have on the solar panels.
Yeah.
But like again, the numbers always work out. Like you sit there and you crunch them in. That's why these businesses are doing it. They're not doing it because it's some green initiative or whatever it is. They crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
They're making money.
We're gonna put like for this one building, we're gonna put $250,000 worth of panels and work and everything and inverters and stuff. But over the next 10 years, we're gonna save $15 million in power costs.
The math is very simple for them, and it's even better for them because guess what hours they're open? The
During
hours the
the
sun
day.
shines. So they use no power at night. So they win.
Yeah.
Like for you and I that do it, it's like, oh, you know what, produces during the day, but we still live there at night. So it doesn't, it works a little bit. But for them, like all these businesses that are just open during the daylight, it's 100% a cash cow.
See, I've kind of one problem with this, right? And that one problem that I have is that we'll take the likes of Sask Power, and they'll tell you, you go out, you buy these bulbs, you put these bulbs in your house, and your electricity bill will go down. So we all go out and we buy these bulbs, and we put them in our houses, and our electricity bill goes down. And Sask Power says, wait, I'm not making enough money anymore. Can you increase the rate, please? And then we end up paying more money, and we're just buying more expensive bulbs.
It's a good system. They're in bed. Big giant conspiracy. They're in bed with the bulbs.
It's big bulbs, isn't
Big
it?
bulbs.
But here in Saskatchewan, it's a Crown Corporation, so it just goes right back into the Saskatchewan government and pays for
And
other
government's
things.
not corrupt at all.
Yeah.
But anyways, speaking of governments, Ryan and I took a bunch of the government's money.
Yes.
It's always good to take their money when they're
Oh,
stupid enough to give it to you.
So we this is the Canadian federal government has a greener homes grant and loan program that we were able to take advantage of and use
Used properly.
used properly.
I don't like to use the term take advantage of
Well-
in case somebody's like, what did you do?
Yeah. How did you scam them? We didn't. It was legit. So we had to do a full assessment of our house before we started our projects, and then once that was done, you could start your project, get the guys in, do the install and everything. And they gave us a $40,000 interest-free, or up to a $40,000 interest-free loan for 10 years. So we have 10 years to pay it back, and no interest on it at all.
And then a $5,000.
And then a
grant,
$5,000 grant,
which
that
is basically forgiven money.
Yeah,
Even better.
Yeah.
It's not forgiven. They write you a check for $5,000.
So you
Yeah.
just hand that back to them and say, "Here's
No,
$5,000."
you
No.
don't. You put that in your bank account and you spend it on
yeah, and
Whatever you want.
And they also paid up to $600 for that initial inspection and the final inspection. So it's actually $5,645 or something is what it worked out to be. Money.
So there is like financial incentive to entice people to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you were smart enough to do it last year, the provincial government was going to give you a 10% return on up to $10,000 for the home renovations that fall into the list. And solar panels fell into the list.
Yeah.
So there's $1,000 tax credit too if you
So-
did over $10,000, which
So-
with solar is pretty much the
Guaranteed.
start. Guaranteed,
Yeah.
you're going to be 10 grand or more.
So if you do the math and you spend, we'll just pretend you spent $20,000 as a fake number, and you got an interest-free loan, so you spent nothing out of your pocket. Nothing out of your pocket. If you did this last year, you got $5,000 back from the federal government as cash in your pocket. The provincial government on your income tax gave you $1,000 back, cash in your pocket. So now you're $6,000 richer for having done this.
Mm-hmm.
And you have solar on your house and like a monthly payment to pay for that, but you have $6,000 in your pocket.
So So the return
Hard
on
cash,
so your
like,
return
yeah.
on investment, investment. So your monthly power bill hopefully goes down by the amount that you're paying towards those loans.
And and it's hard to tell this early how when people
Well,
are
like ours right now, because we Ryan didn't max his out, but ours we did. So we maxed ours out at the full 40,000. So we have to pay $333.33 a month. Now, luckily, we had a large portion of that as cash to pay for it ahead of time. Even if you had like 10 grand, let's say you had saved up 10 grand and of your own money to pay for it, you take that $40,000 from them, and now what we've done is we reinvested in bank accounts, like in short-term investments,
yeah.
Yeah.
because you only need $3,000 a year to pay back, or sorry, $4,000 a year, so $333.33 a month. So you need to keep $4,000 a year for the first year, and then you put the other $4,000 of that $40,000 in a 1 year, whatever GIC or whatever.
Yeah.
The other $4,000 in a 2 year, the other in a 3 year, the other in a 5 year, the rest of it, and then repeat after 5 years. So at the end of things, we are actually going to have $24,000 of money that we've made on the loan that they gave us, because it's an interest-free loan.
that's again assuming you have the cash free.
It's
Most
assuming you
people-
have the cash free, but even if you have some of the cash free, that start. So I mean, it's a program that works, and it's encouraged Ryan and I to do a project we've both wanted to do for years. So I mean, it's done.
So regardless of how much you get, it's over 10 years. So if you only got $20,000,
your payment is.
whatever.
it'd be half. Would be 100 and
Yeah,
something a month.
115.
I figured out like my solar is about $175 a month
Yeah.
for that. So like what I did is I upgraded the service to my house because I needed that to put the solar on. I probably could have done it a different way, but the way I wanted it designed and put in, it was just I could lump the cost to upgrade the service to my house into the loan. So whatever, but the actual, so I don't include what I'm paying on that in my monthly when I'm figuring out what it is to recover my cost, right? So about $175 a month is what my loan is for the solar. And like so far, I think the first month I saved $80. But the funny part about the loan is they take about 2 months before they start taking out of your account. So I'm basically even now after the second month, and now we're getting into the sunnier months, so I should be further ahead, right?
Yeah, like I'm dumping credits into the grid like crazy. My bill's just the SAS Power minimum, which is the connection fee of $33 a month or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't have a $300 and some a month solar bill, and I'm banking now my solar for come winter. So I'll be, I mean, even during the winter, I was still making power, but not enough to cover my whole daily cost. So yeah, it's
When people ask about it, the first thing I tell them, they're like, well, how big should I make it? Like, I don't want to spend too much. And the answer I told them is what I told Christian, as big as you can get it. And everyone's like, what do you mean? Well, it's wasting power. I'm like, it's not.
no.
You're putting it back into the network
Well,
that someone else uses.
But you're going to change
But even that-
usage. Like, you're going to pull out that natural gas water heater.
You're going to pull out your natural gas furnace. You're
Yeah.
going to
You're buying an electric car. You're gonna do things because you're like,
Yeah.
I've got all this free power.
And on top of it, those panels slowly degrade at like about 1% a year, say. It's like 0.6 to 0.8, but let's just say 1%. So right now you might be making 5 megawatts a year. Well, next year you're only going to be making 4.9. So over the life of those panels, it's supposed to be less than 20% over 25 years. So you're going to be down 20% over 25 years. Now you're at 4 megawatts in 25 years when you're going to be using more power.
And in 25 years, they're going to have hopefully more efficient panels because
Right.
25 years ago, what was the efficiency on a solar panel?
Well, the joke I always make about people, and they're like, well, how long do they can last? And I'm like, how long do shingles last? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, shingles last 35 years. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, how many houses have you seen where shingles have made it 35 years and not get ripped up from a hailstorm?
Right.
Well, not very many. I'm like, that's my bet on my solar panels too.
Yeah.
So like just as a
Make sure
Well,
they're
and,
on-
and if they do get ripped up, it's insurance that covers it.
That's why the first thing you ask your insurance policy is, do you cover my solar panels? And they're like, yes, we do. I'm like, is that in writing? Thank you.
So just as a point of reference, the first solar panels in like the 1940s or 55, Hoffman Electronics created a commercial silicone solar panel that was 2% efficient. Going further into like even just recently, the 2016s, 2015s, you're looking at 22.8 and 24%. And researchers at the National Renewable Energy Labs broke the record by developing one that does 39.2% efficiency, and that was still in 2019. So those ones are probably almost to market now.
But some of them you got to look at too. A lot of them, if you read into it, they're bifacial, so they're not
Biracial?
bifacial. No, let's not go there. But so what their claim to fame is that they'll take the sun that misses the panels and hits the ground and bounces back, which sounds like a great idea unless you have a black roof and you put them on your black roof, and then there's no light bouncing back.
Yeah.
But when they build like a solar farm in the middle of a field and there's snow behind it or whatever, then
Or they
that
put
works.
white rocks or something.
Yeah.
That's right. Like somebody was posting their pictures online. They'd built these solar panels on their roof, and they're like, yeah, they're 400 watt solar panels bifacial. And I look at the picture and his roof is black, and I'm like, do you know what bifacial panels are? And you obviously knew the answer was no. And I'm like, you got some good panels, but they're just not good for you.
Yeah.
So like, good job.
Yeah.
But like, so again, when they start talking about efficiencies, you have to really read the
Yeah.
fine print as to how they're making that more efficient.
Well, and they're also making clear glass windows now they're not
Well, and that's,
quite as a high
and that's
efficiency.
that's the thin film solar cells.
Yeah.
So those ones, even those, they're looking at like 23 to 24% efficiency on those, which is amazing just to throw a film over top of a window and pull that much solar out of it.
Until you're trying to pay your electrician to connect that up. Like a lot of these ideas,
Well, these
they sound good.
These
but
are places like we've talked about this in the past with technology, how it grows and how it changes. Like these are opportunities that can be leveraged by people. But
very unique
yes, they are.
niche. It's more to show that you can, right? And the hope is that somebody will take this and use it for something. Because in reality, when they say like, "Hey, we're going to put this on a window," they're not saying you should go put this on your windows on your house, because that's not really what their goal is. But they want to say like, we can put this on glass. Do you use glass for something that we could put this on, per se, right? Like, do you build a giant greenhouse somewhere? Or like you look at the glass palace out of the base where all these glass windows and there's just giant atrium. It's like, okay, well, that's something you could put it on.
Yeah.
But like,
You look at my house. I don't think I have any window. I have two windows that face south, and they have a big tree in front of them, and they're only like 2 or 3 feet across. That's
So
it.
it's perfect for you then.
so like,
You can go back and shine a flashlight on it and charge your solar.
so they're like, yeah, you'd get 100 watts worth of panels maybe on your windows,
Yeah.
and then it would cost you $10,000 for an electrician to run that line off those windows, and you're like, this would never, ever work. But it's neat ideas, and there's always somebody coming across with a neat idea, but sometimes it's like, that will never work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when they talked about solar roads, and they were like, oh, these,
Oh yeah, they have lights in them, and they can heat up and melt the ice,
and then they're like, oh, this didn't work, and I'm like,
the entire road's made of glass. Pardon?
yeah, like this seems like a bad idea, but I mean, like, it's not my money,
Yeah.
so by all means, like,
Well,
try
and
it out.
What you were saying there about the electricians, like the what's his name, Elon Musk and his solar panel roof, like the solar shingles,
The solar tiles.
solar tiles. Yeah, great idea. But the cost and the amount of manpower it took to put one roof in was unreal.
It's a neat idea.
Every single one of those had to have a wire run that went into a bundle, that went into, like, it wasn't just like click it in and staple it down like they are for a regular shingle.
So this is probably an important point that we talk about from what we talked about initially, when there's string inverters and there's micro inverters like mine. So the problem that I have with string inverters, which Christian's solved because he put what's called optimizers on each panel. So he can look on his phone or anything and he can see that each panel is producing
X amount. And I can compare my panels across the entire system and see, oh, well, that one's making like 10% less. Why? And I can message the guys who installed it and say, hey, this panel's not working. And they can go, oh, yeah, we can see that too. I guess we got to replace that panel.
Versus if you don't go with an optimizer and you just go with string panels.
Like our friend in Saskatoon.
You look at your inverter and it's, well, there's a guy that's posting on like the Sask EV thing on Facebook. And he's like, I've got 5 kilowatts worth of panels. And my inverter is only saying I'm putting out 2.5 kilowatts at peak. And I'm like, you got a string inverter, don't you? Yeah. I'm like, did you put optimizers on? Nope.
You've got an entire side that's not working.
So the only way to tell is either to pay an electrician to come out, or you can take a towel up there and cover each panel, and then you can check your thing and see like, oh, this is because when I put a towel over this panel, my readings didn't change. So that means this panel's not working.
Yeah.
Now, does it mean that panel's actually not working, or is there a problem with the wiring?
And
Does that sound like fun? Now you have to. So now you need a wiring diagram for where all the junction boxes are, so you can trace this out.
Well, and they're all in what series? No, parallel.
It depends on how they're trying to run. So sometimes you have groups that are in series, and sometimes you have a group in parallel. It depends on their plan.
Yes.
Like they have to get it up to about 400 volts is what most of these string inverters run at. So depending on how many panels you have, some will be in parallel, some will be in series. Again, you need a network diagram to figure this out. So, well, this sounds difficult because like you need this diagram, but there's only, let's pretend like you got what, 20 panels?
46.
So you got 46 panels. Well, but just entertain it. You got 46 panels, so that diagram would be fairly difficult without optimizers. Can you imagine a test an Elon Musk roof where each tile is a panel,
Which is only 1 foot by 1 foot.
So you
Mine-
have
mine-
shingles.
mine
How many
are-
shingles are in a pack?
right? Well, they're 3 foot by.
Yeah,
so-
but let's say
But even at 1 foot by 1 foot, and you're doing your roof, that's 1,700 square feet of roof. Now you start doing the math. That's 1,700 square feet of 1,700 panels. Just rough
And-
estimate, because there's actually overlap, and so you'd actually probably be more than that. But you now have 1,700 panels. That one in the middle stopped working.
how do you know?
How do you know?
Yeah.
You wouldn't. This is the problem
Yeah.
with them. And if you don't have an optimizer, you don't know. So like if you put together your system and you have no optimizers and it's working today, and 6 months down the road, it's not quite producing 5 kilowatts. It's producing 49 something. Is it because the panel failed? Is it because what's the reason?
Yeah.
You don't know. You're sitting there going, I wish I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
You have no information. You can't troubleshoot that. And being as we all kind of work in IT and tech fields, like that's pretty much the end of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
hooked.
that's like someone calling Fergal saying, yeah, my computer's not working. Well, who are you? I can't tell you that. Well, where are you? I can't tell you that either.
But find my computer.
Well, what kind of operating system are you using? I can't tell you.
It's a blue screen.
Yeah.
And like, but legitimately, like there's installers that will put these in,
Yeah.
and that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so like there's gonna be a lot of guys that don't have a clue, and they're gonna be, so what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a lot of people that are like, this solar's junk.
Yeah.
Why is it junk? Well, mine just doesn't work.
When they don't understand how it works.
Don't understand how it works, and it happens every time there's a leap in technology.
They bought the
exactly,
Russian
yeah.
Lada of cars. It's new, but it's a Russian Lada. Like,
But like I have a farmer down south. He's like, yeah, one of my neighbors, like 10 years ago, he put in like this massive solar farm, and he says it's junk. Probably is.
yeah.
What do you mean? I'm like, well, like if you don't know what you're doing, and they didn't give you a diagram to explain it, and you have no administration tool to look at it to see how it's producing,
To analyze it, it's like, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
junk.
Yeah, like I'll show you the guys here, but like there's a picture of all my panels on my roof, even laid out in a map, just like the
To
roof.
represent the roof.
Yeah, so there's left side, right side, and front side.
Yeah.
Right, Jess has seen it, and it shows me exactly what each panel produced today.
And you don't need that because yours is.
I look at it, but mine just looks at on each individual microinverter. So same thing as his.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like, because I don't have to deal with a big inverter like his at the box, like I look directly at each one. And it's not that there's anything wrong with his. The idea,
It's two different systems doing the same thing, and,
That's right.
and his is easier to, like mine is maxed out. I can't add more panels to it. If I do, I have to spend $20,000 on a whole new inverter.
you have to start the process all over again. I just buy a couple more panels and a couple more microinverters, plug them in, and
Away it goes.
that's the end of my day. You know,
Yes.
like, obviously, I would tell Sask Power and I would get a permit and do all the things.
Well, yes.
Well, yes, because that's the proper way you're supposed to do
it
it.
is in my contract that if I make any changes to it, I will tell Sask Power and follow all those. But
Get it inspected.
in theory,
Yeah.
what I have to do is very minimal. And anybody that goes with a string inverter, like, you're done, right? And this is why when I tell people, like, how big should I get? The biggest you can get.
The biggest you can afford and the biggest you can get.
Because, well, yeah, we shouldn't say the biggest you can get because we just discovered that. So, like, Sask Power, they tell you, like, 20 kilowatts is the most that they really want you to produce. Like, there's some, I think it's like
In a-
23.
Yeah. We
like,
did-
worth of inverters.
so I'm,
Oh, okay.
I'm near there. Like,
It's some arbitrary number. I have no idea how they came up with it. I'm sure some engineer at Sask Power one day would be able to explain to us. Doesn't matter. So if you work that out, like how much that is, that's, divide that by 240 volts. Like that's a lot of current you're outputting. So most people don't even have a big enough panel in their house to support this.
Or the cable underground coming in.
It's probably a reasonable number because of it. And I was just reading an article talking about Saskatoon Light and Power System, which is just a little bit different. They set the limit at 100 kilowatts. So I kind of did the math, and that's over 400 amps. And like most people only have like a 200 amp service.
If they're lucky.
If they're lucky. And so like that's not even including your usage.
Yeah.
So like you need actually above and beyond that. So if you're putting in a 100 kilowatt service, you must be using 100 kilowatts worth of power. So now you need like an 800 amp service. It's obviously like a solution for big commercial or whatever it is.
But they don't, Saskatoon Light and Power doesn't differentiate between residential or commercial in their solar production, whereas SaskPower does. You can have an actual commercial solar agreement with SaskPower.
Yeah, they max that out though. It's like 10 megawatts or something a year.
Yeah,
production.
there's a certain number, and then you have to be like a small power producer or something like that. But SaskPower does interesting thing. Like I know people that have tried building very big things for very large industries, and like SaskPower's like, no. Like, what do you mean no? Well, then you need to put a giant battery in there. I don't want a giant battery. I want you to be the battery. That's the purpose of it. And they're like,
no.
And like,
but I mean,
you can't argue with that.
But I mean,
like,
we had a booming solar industry here like 5-6 years ago because they had a 1-to-1 ratio. So you'd put in 1 kilowatt and you could take 1 kilowatt out. Well, it was so booming that they had 2 years worth of applications in 2 months.
Oh.
And so and my in-laws actually got in on that one, and they signed their contract and everything. So that they shut that system down after, I think it was like 8 months, because they're like, well, we're full. Like what we had planned for going into the grid is maxed out and we can't do any more. Well, they've got a new program with Ryan and I, and ours is 2-to-1. So we put in 2, we can take out 1 is what we get credit for. And Saskatoon Light and Power, they're still on 1-to-1. So our friend Jeff, who's up in Saskatoon, has 1-to-1 or 1-to-1 as he's putting it in. So he's got a system half the size of Ryan's, but still getting credit for 1-to-1. So
Because he's on 1-to-1, like, yeah.
It's interesting that, and like I was kind of talking to him about it, because you're looking at it, it's the utility is really losing money when they do that to you, right? Because like when SaskPower burns some coal to make power, it doesn't cost them 14 cents a kilowatt hour, because there's no way they would sell it to you for 14 cents if it cost them 14 cents to burn it. So to pay me 14 cents for my solar power to sell you for 14 cents, that's not a business model.
No.
That's how you go to business,
yeah.
right? So
yeah, like they're paying me, or if we were on 1-to-1, right? They're paying me and Ryan 14 cents, and my neighbor's buying it off them for 14 cents in the day, right? Like, yeah.
So what's SaskPower doing? They're losing money, right? So when people complain about it, I'm like, 7.5 cents is, they said this was the number that when they put out like bids for people to build them a solar farm, that's what they were paying the solar farm to make it. Is it true? You don't know. But that's the number they picked, and in the end,
It's easy math.
It is. And when they talk about like it's 2-to-1, it's actually a little bit better than that. Like, because if you really read your bill, which are horrible if you ever look at your SaskPower bills.
Especially in the last couple months.
Yeah, they just changed it, and it's
Oh my God.
They
terrible.
made it better.
Yeah.
Well, all they did is they hid the numbers. They hid the math, which for some people is probably nice because they don't want to look at how they figured out. They just want to see like the total.
Bottom line.
0.143568 cents per kilowatt hour. It's this big long number, and you're like, okay.
So when they charge you, so like for right now, if I sell SaskPower 500 kilowatt hours and I use 500 kilowatt hours, I no longer pay the carbon tax on the 500 kilowatt hours that I use of theirs because I sold them 500 kilowatt hours
Clean.
carbon tax free power, which that seems fair. I think that's a fair deal. Now, if SaskPower changes after we say this, I'm going to be mad at you, all of you. But if you go down to the next column, there's a municipal tax on your power bill.
Yep.
And a federal GST on your power bill. I also don't pay those taxes on the power that I sell them and buy back. So that works out to 15% on top of it. So when I'm selling it to them at 7.5%, I'm also not paying the carbon tax, which is worth like 0.5%. And I'm not paying 15% of the
Taxes.
taxes. So it works out to almost 10 cents. So when when you're talking about it, like the math is very dirty and it's hard to read and they don't really explain it very well, but I don't think it's because they know actually what they're doing, because they obviously want to charge me a municipal tax on my power and they want to charge me GST on my power.
Well, here's a funny thing. My father-in-law, who, like I said, is on the old plan, he has to call in his meter reading because his yard's locked. So he calls in his meter reading every month. He's very diligent. He's one of these guys. He's like, oh, how much did you make today? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't looked. He's like, I'm at like 22.2. You know, like he watches every panel. He actually had 2 panels he had to get replaced. But like he's like every second month or so he calls into Sask Power with his meter reading and they're confused. They don't know. Like he's like, okay, I've got my what is it? What are the two? There's your
consumption and your generation.
So consumption and generation. It actually is on our meter and it flashes at us. So it tells us what we've, and he...
Also, it's got 2 displays, or
No,
it
one.
flashes one and then the other?
Yeah, so like it'll say, so like on the thing, if you read at the top, it says 1 is your consumption and then 2 is generation. So it'll flash the number 1 and then beside it, it'll say how many kilowatt hours you used.
Okay.
Then it'll flash the number 2 and then it'll say kilowatt hours generated. And then it goes to the 8s so they can prove there's no burnt out rates, and then it goes back to the start.
And so my father-in-law has been calling his in, and every couple of months he's like, yeah, randomly they just say, oh, well, that can't be right. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I've got a bi-directional meter. Well, you can't have negative numbers. And he's like, well, yeah, it's summer. Like this was when he first got the meter. He's like, it's summer. I've been generating all summer and it's pushed my meter into the negatives. They're like, oh, well, we're going to have to, and he gets an email back the next day. Oh yeah, sorry, your numbers were accepted. But it's just like,
because his meter is way different than everyone else's. So they're
his was the original ones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, even the system itself doesn't understand. Like the people he's calling in to give the numbers to don't know. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's new. It's new to all of us.
They'll figure it out someday.
Yeah, yeah. How do solar panels like their eggs?
Over easy.
Sunny side up.
Groan.
Don't you dare push that button.
That doesn't deserve a laugh?
No, definitely not. No.
Or even a rim shot?
We should talk about the one other thing, difference between mine and yours. And
Yeah.
because he's got a string inverter, he can actually put a battery in line with his solar panels to generate power when the sun is not shining. I can't do that because there's no DC. Like the DC right
'cause
away
it comes
turns to AC.
Right,
so there's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
place for me to stick a battery. Does this
Well,
matter?
if you were to do a rectifier, you could.
But that's completely different. That's separate from the solar, right? I could build a battery bank with an inverter and I could run it that way, but that's not.
But then you're going to have more losses on your power generation.
Because now I went from DC to AC, from AC back to DC.
Yeah.
And then, so like, you might as well just light
it's-
money on fire and watch it burn, you know? But,
I mean, if you can get the batteries for free,
you know,
or
but it's important
or
because
like we're
some
looking-
people have asked this question. Like one of my friends that got the similar setup to me, he's like, how do I put batteries in it? I'm like,
You don't.
you don't. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you don't.
Yeah.
You know, but there's other ways to do it. Like there's bi-directional EV chargers that are coming out now. So what you can do is
Oh, like the Ford
Yeah.
truck one.
no.
Not
So
yet. Not yet.
The way the Ford truck one talks, they just have a generator on board, so you could plug your house into it. But it's no different than if I was to fire up a gas generator in my backyard and build
For
a
the full electric.
yes,
yeah,
the
and
full-
build it
the-
and build
the
it.
Ford
They don't
Lightning.
They don't have an engine. It's just
generator, so it's just an inverter, but
Okay.
it just runs off the battery. But it doesn't feed your house that way. You'd have to build like a suicide cable. You'd have to trip your main, and you'd
oh,
have,
so that's not what I was reading when I was reading the article.
It's what it is, though.
yeah. So they'll sell you one that kind of plugs into your house that way, but it's not. It's not like that
okay.
because they're using that plug-in in the box, but that's not really using your
Okay,
EV
but
charger.
what you're talking about is it's actually using the battery in the car as a battery.
That's right. Well, that one is still using the battery in the truck as a battery. It's just the way it's connected.
Yeah,
is not.
instead of, but it would go
You
through
manually have to do
the high
things.
voltage connection instead of going back through an inverter.
Yeah, well, I guess it's still technically working. It's just that in doing that, it's not the way you normally would plug your truck into your house.
Right.
And that's, so you'd have to change the way you're plugging your truck in to make it work.
Okay.
So what these do is like, normally if you ever looked at like the J1772, I think is the standard for like most EVs other than a Tesla. It plugs in. It just plugs in and it communicates, and then it sends AC into your car, which turns into DC, charges your battery. When you're doing like a level 3 or the fancy like chargers that like co-op gas station stuff, they have 2 little DC plugs at the bottom. That's where they send in the 400 volts DC straight into your battery. So what some companies that are making these microinverters are doing is they're building a bidirectional charger using that. So what they do is basically they take like the inverters that are on my roof or on the side of his house, and they attach them onto the same box as your car charger. And what they're saying is they're going to do is now you can choose to take the DC off of your high voltage battery and run it back to your house, turn it into AC, and power your house.
Gotcha.
So my inverter now takes, when it loses power to the inverter from the grid, it goes click, and the battery is now feeding into the inverter, the solar inverter, and back into my house as
But it's
power
being
from my car. So
converted
my car
back from DC to AC again.
So my car is now a battery backup on my house.
You just have to kill the main so you wouldn't pump
Yeah.
out to the grid in doing this, but in theory you've created a battery with a very expensive car. But they're doing it in Europe already with trials and things like that, so it'll come here next. But it's an interesting way to look at it. Like, do you buy a $15,000 Tesla Powerwall for a 10 kilowatt hour battery?
Yeah.
Or do you buy a $10,000 smart car?
Which is what I just did with the smart car I'm buying. It's with a, what is it, a 17.8
brand new,
kilowatt?
it's 17.8. So like, but it's
I think we're at
Yeah.
like 16.8 or something like that right now because it's a 10-year-old car. But so now I've got a $9,000 Tesla wall essentially, which would cost how much did you say?
15 grand from
Yeah,
Tesla.
so almost 30 grand if you bought the Tesla branded ones. I've got a car now that is going to function the same way once we get those bidirectional meter.
Yeah. So if the car just decides it doesn't want to be a car anymore,
You can still use it as a battery.
Yeah.
as long as the battery still works, like assuming that something failed other than the car
So it's going
So
to
you-
identify
battery.
as a battery now, is it that? It's going to identify as a battery now.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
going to
So you're going to
identify
see
the battery.
you're going to see a whole new generation of cars up on blocks, keeping houses running. So the hillbillies of the world.
It's going to look good when you look beside his house and there's a smart car sitting on blocks and you're like, what is wrong with that guy? And people are gonna be like, I don't understand.
Yeah, and then the power goes out, and I'm sitting there with all my lights on.
Or all those old Teslas when someone gets, this Tesla's a piece of garbage, I don't want it anymore. I see lots of things where they're
The battery's down to 70%.
it's not the battery, it's the something else that's going on. It's
Computers and
computers
relays.
in it, or it's what the heck? There was one I saw. He couldn't do anything with it because it was marked as not his, and when he went to register it on the system, it went, no, that's not yours, and it locked the car down. And the only way he'd get to work again was to replace the main computer module, which is like half the cost of the car in some of the cases. So
This is why I didn't buy a Tesla.
yeah.
If you spend a little bit of time, you read some of these stories, you're like, but why would you run a business like that?
Yeah.
Granted, that's what they're in the business of. It's not
Because
being like
they
a car
could
company
at the time.
That's right. But they're in the business of not being a car company,
Yeah.
which is cool. But then you're like, but I want you to be a car company. I want to buy those rims. Like one of my favorite stories on the internet was a guy bought this Tesla, and if you got enough referrals, they would give you the upgrade for your Tesla, which is just a wheel and tire package, which you could have bought when you bought your car brand new, but they'll give it to you when you do this. This is fine. So he did. He's referred enough friends to buy Tesla, and they go to send him the wheel and tire package. But the options package, if you'd have bought it brand new, comes with something stupid. Like it was like a spoiler or some random piece of plastic. So he calls Tesla up. He's like, I'd like to buy that piece of plastic.
No.
But I want to write you a check. The answer was no. Who does business like that?
Who says no to a customer who wants to give them money?
Like, if you walk up to Ford and you're like, you know what? I want to buy that option that I forgot. And they're like, well, do you got money? They're like, yep. And they're like,
Bring your car in. We'll do it for you.
bring your car in and we'll gladly take your money.
Yeah.
And like Tesla does some things right, where I like when they build a car, they'll put in all the options and they just software lock them,
Yeah.
which seems like a good idea because it simplifies manufacturing and a whole bunch of other things. But like you sit there and you hear stories like that and you're like, but why?
Yeah.
And like, do you want to be on the other end of that? Like, again, I have nothing against people that buy Teslas. I know lots of people that own them, and that's fine. But like, you hear those stories and you're like, that's something I would do. Like I would be that guy that's like, I want that
Yeah,
spoiler.
5 years down the road, I want to mod my car with this or that. Or
And if like there's people that buy them that are completely utilitarian, that I just need a car that gets me to A and B, and that's why they have a white Tesla, because they weren't willing to pay the extra any amount of money to paint it any other color. And so that's fine.
Yep.
You wanted a utilitarian car, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's not
yeah.
what I like. And so like when you hear stories like that, you're like, that would be me. And I would be losing my mind on the other end of the phone or at a dealer being like, just keep me that stupid. I'm going to go rip it off that one.
I'm just going to come there. We're going to pick one of the ones and you're going to pull it off.
Yeah, I'm just going to pull it off that one in the lot. You know, like that's kind of the world we live in. But like,
But
to be in a business model where you're telling the customer no when they're trying to give you money. You know, and like you watch like Rich Rebuilds there on YouTube and like the problems he's had with them, and you're like, I don't want to deal with that as a company.
No.
It's not really interesting to me to have to deal with those problems, and like they're problems as a company you're making for yourself. Why
Yeah.
would you make problems for yourself? Like we all work for places that do stupid things and like whatever, but like usually in the end of the day you're like, yeah, that was just a dumb decision made by somebody in power, but like eventually it goes away or something, they get corrected. But these are like big decisions.
Well, we'll have to have you back on another solar car or a electric car update, because we did one last year, but none of us, we talked a little bit about the one you owned, and now I'll have one. So we'll maybe have you back on another EV podcast and we can discuss how our EVs are doing. And
Yeah, I'll be able to check my battery's capacity at 2 years of life and see if it's degraded by 1,000%, because the EVs don't work in the winter and the batteries are garbage. And
We've talked about
we
that.
blew all those myths out of the water, but yes,
it's fun though.
we tried to educate the people about it, Ryan.
It is fun,
But-
and I enjoy it. And
It's been wonderful having you here and getting your info on solar and everything that we've been through over the last year, trying to get it done on both our houses. So if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to us and we can get you in touch with us. Ryan and I, we have a group that I called SPF, because we're solar pals forever.
The solar friends.
But
we stare at the sun together.
yeah.
Long walks on sunny roofs, checking the panels.
But
So when the first eclipse comes by, it's the end of the world.
My
Yeah.
wife was taking pictures like the first time snow fell after we had the solar panels out there, and before I went to work, I go up on the roof and I take the broom and I'm sweeping it off, and she's like, "This is how he dies." And I'm like,
But I
very
died
possibility.
for a cause.
Yeah.
like-
I died for the earth. Tell my kids I was trying to save the planet.
And like, do I really care? Not really, but it was more like, I want to see the numbers.
Yeah.
Like back to ring those phones thing. Like
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's a game.
And that's kind of how we all are. Like Ryan and I, Jeff will message us, "Oh, you guys must be cloudy today," because he's got access. We've all got access to each other's system, and he's like, "Oh yeah, your peaks and valleys are all over the place. It must be cloudy down there."
Yeah, stupid sunny clouds.
But anyways, that's been
Thanks
great.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for
And,
having me.
We will talk to you again, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks again for letting us into your ear holes with this nerdish, nerdy nerd news podcast. Check out our website at wildshot.ca.
You can find us on all the socials under Nerdish, Nerdy, Nerd News. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and support us at patreon.com/nerdish to get more bonus content, show notes, and merch.
If you'd like to send us topics for future episodes or comment about our existing ones, please email us info@wildshot.ca. And remember, stay nerdy.
Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.